I remember feeling the desperation of wanting to help my brother, save him, get him back somehow. And I was desperate enough and willing to do anything or sacrifice anything to have him back. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cold Box Show. My name is Michael, and I'm here telling my story. So I kind of got a weird one for you today. It's a bit difficult for me to talk about. There are parts of this story that I just feel a little foolish about, so I'm a little embarrassed to tell it, but it's all part of the process, I suppose. If you're new to this channel, what you need to know is my name is Michael, and I am an addict and currently 2+ years sober. But a big part of my story has to do with the Humboldt Broncos bus crash and my brother being the assistant coach who was on that bus, and he passed away in the crash. So with that out of the way, I'd like to get into aspects of my story that happened over the next couple of weeks after the crash. A few things to get out of the way real quick. When I mention God, I'm not talking specifically about any kind of religious figure. I'm using the word God as a way of simplifying some great overseer, some deity, call it what you will. The story is definitely not going to be religious heavy. Just about a few things that I can recall during a few weeks after the crash. Some would say maybe paranormal, some would say spiritual, religious, whatever. Some would say nothing. But it's stuck in my mind, and I'd like to get it out. I'd like to share it. So let's do this. I grew up going to church as a child, went to Sunday school and all that. But organized sports kind of led myself and my family away from that. I had knowledge of the Christian faith. I actually learned more about the Christian faith from television than I did going to church. But anyway. So I wouldn't call myself Christian. I would just say I'm more just spiritual. But now I'm going to tell you about how the crash affected my spirituality, let's call it. As many of you know, having watched previous videos of mine, the night of the crash, I got down on my knees and prayed to God for my brother to be okay. That was completely out of character for me, really, but I guess desperate times call for desperate measures. Of course, having watched those videos, and if you haven't, right there, as I was saying, having prayed and it not working, it left me very angry with God. And that, coupled with my grief and my addiction issues, I kind of went off the deep end as far as desperation goes. Anyway, throughout the first couple of weeks there, I don't know how many times I heard people say God's plan, which just made me all the more angry, either at God or about religion, spirituality, people, God, gods, who knows. And I decided in my mind that if God wouldn't help, maybe I'll try the other guy. Of course, this is referring to the Christian faith, just like the devil. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not a religious person. I don't know where my beliefs lie as far as an afterlife and heaven, hell, and all that. But being in such great despair and having such grief weighing on me, and sadness and anger, my mind was full of fear, I guess you could say, for my brother. Crazy thoughts like, what if he's in hell and I'm not doing anything to help him, which is insane, I think. I guess my thought process went that way. Is like, I'm still his big brother. I still gotta look out for him. And I gotta do anything I can, you know. I guess that all boils down to worrying about my brother. That just doesn't go away. And wanting to protect him and look out for him. Anyway, I got really irrational for a bit. Now, I mean, there's obvious reasons for it. As I mentioned, my grief, grieving my brother, the fact that I was constantly drinking just to cope, the fact that maybe I watched a little bit too much supernatural television. But speaking of supernatural, for those of you who don't know, it's a television show. On the show, these two brothers, they make deals with demons at crossroads. Now this is kind of the part where I feel a little bit foolish, and it's kind of hard for me to admit to, but again, desperate times. So between my knowledge of this whole crossroads deals from a television show and my knowledge of this song called Crossroads Blues, I believe. Yeah, Crossroads Blues by Robert Johnson. Very old song. A lot of people speculated it was, he'd written it about himself selling his soul for his music abilities. Now I know it all sounds a little wild, a little crazy, but if you look at fairy tales and old stories, they were all written for a reason. They all had morals to them, and they all had roots, you know. They all had roots in reality somewhere. Obviously, the truth of it all gets stretched and mystified, let's call it. But there is truth to these stories. And today's fairy tales or wives' tales are television stories, movies, books, songs. And I guess I was just desperate enough to try. So these deals go down at a crossroads or in a graveyard. And I killed two birds with one stone with that, because outside of my small town that I grew up in, we have a graveyard, and it's got kind of a loop that crosses in it. And so there's a crossroads right there in the middle of a graveyard. And I decided I was gonna go there and see what happens. Now again, I want to make perfectly clear, I was desperate, sad, angry, probably a little insane with my grief. And on top of that, I was drunk pretty much all the time. I remember feeling the desperation of wanting to help my brother, save him, get him back somehow. And I was desperate enough and willing to do anything or sacrifice anything to have him back. So I went to the graveyard, and I remember it was just pitch black. I remember just standing there at the crossroads, just pleading for something to show up. I was desperate, and I just wanted, I remember kind of being a little terrified that something actually would show up, but at the same time determined to do whatever it took to get my brother back. Of course, nothing showed up. I don't even know how long I was there. Of course, me being me, with my self-confidence and lack of self-worth, started thinking, well, maybe it didn't show up because it didn't need to make a deal for my soul, because I'm on my way down there anyway. A lot of crazy things go through your mind when you're sad, depressed, grieving, and it's not quite right, I guess. Anyway, that That didn't work out, obviously. I just remember being angry. Just angry at everything. Just kind of feeling lost, like there was no answer to anything. Which kind of leads me to, wanting to know that my brother was okay. Any kind of sign, anything to have, any way he could just tell me that he was all right. And maybe he did. There were a few things, just looking back, that just kind of makes me question. Obviously, from past videos, I told you about the moment of the crash. My left ear ringing to the point where it just stopped hearing anything. So that happened. There was a time, I believe it was in the first week there, where there were a few of us sitting in the living room, and my brother's graduation photo, my parents have them, myself, my sister, and my brother, our graduation photos hanging on the wall, and my brother's grad photo fell just off the wall. No one was near it. The back had kind of torn, and it had fallen. It didn't break or anything, but it was, strangely enough, it was my brother's. I mean, could have been nothing. I just remember saying out loud, Mark has a sense of humor. At another time, I'm not sure when it was exactly, my brother's memorial pamphlet thing was sitting up on the mantle. And I mean, there are obvious ways that this could have happened. Like it blew off the mantle, just his. There were a few of them up there, but only my brother's fell off, the mantle. Obviously, like, easy explanation is wind, but why just his, Another thing that happened, I remember I was in the sober house, in my room, just going through my stuff, and prior to that, I remember I was thinking about my brother and just kind of like missing him, and just asked out loud, Mark, if you're around, can you just give me a sign? And I remember just sitting there, just waiting for something to happen, and I waited probably a few seconds and just kind of chuckled to myself and was like, yeah, it's kind of what I expected. Nothing was going to happen. And then just minutes later, I was going through stuff, and a backpack, which was completely stable and sturdy where it was sitting, with nothing in it, had no reason to move whatsoever, because I wasn't really near it. I was kind of below it. It just fell over right onto me. And at that point, I had another little chuckle, nice little laugh, just thinking, okay, so you still have a sense of humor, hey? I don't know if any of those things mean anything. I think sometimes we just give meaning to things, even though they're just random, inconsequential. I guess it's just one of those things that just gives us hope that our loved one's all right. But there is another side to all this. I've also had dreams about Mark. 3 that come to mind that I can actually remember vaguely, but I remember. The first one that I dreamt of my brother was I saw him in a giant stadium, like a giant hockey rink, and he said, hey, and that was it. I think I woke up right after that. Another dream I had, which was kind of difficult to experience, was Mark was alive. And we were all my family was sitting at the dinner table, but Mark wasn't himself. It was like he had some kind of head injury, and everything was slowed down for him. That was really tough. The third dream is actually kind of an interesting little story within the story. I saw Mark, but I didn't speak to him. He was a little bit of a distance away, and he was playing with a little girl. But he looked over at me, and so did the little girl, and they smiled, and she started walking towards me, looking at me as though she knew me. And I woke up. Now, a little context to that in where my mind went. I've spoken to a few women who have lost children before they reached full term. And both of them swore that on the other side, that kids do grow up. And so my mind immediately went to that little girl could be a child that I had part in making that didn't quite reach full term, which I think is, I don't know, there's something comforting about that for me. If it is the case, the fact that they may have found each other, that's, I suppose I could say that I really hope that's the case. Anyway, I don't know what all those mean. Could just be my mind trying to rationalize the loss. Could be there is another side, an afterlife, and all that. Guess we'll never know until we get there, right? I still have a bit of a issue with trans religion, let's call it, and just a spirituality, a bit of an issue there. I have a lot of anger to let go of, and it's kind of tough to fully do an AA program well if you don't allow yourself to let things go and bring spirituality into your life. I think that's in part why sometimes I feel like I'm at a bit of a standstill in my life, and why some days are really, really difficult for me. It's been, just realized today is April 21st. Today is the 3-year anniversary of my brother's memorial. It's been more than 3 years since the crash, and it's 3 years to the day of his memorial. And I never would have thought that I'd still be having difficulty with all this 3 years later. On the other hand, I didn't think I could survive losing my brother. I guess it just goes to show that grief is different for everyone, and it takes time. It takes time to deal with these things. It's such a simple process on paper, but to actually go through it all over again, over and over. I don't know how many times I've told my story. It never seems to feel like it's getting easier, but I think it might be. I'm making progress, I think. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Well, I didn't actually, but I think I feel like it's important because it's part of the story, and it's part of what's going on for me. And I feel it's important, no matter how foolish it seems, that I share what I'm going through. Because who knows? You might be going through the same thing. You might be feeling these same feelings. And if it's helpful to hear that somebody else was going through this, then I'm glad I'm doing this. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, feel free to like it. Hit that little thumbs up button. I'd appreciate it. If you want to continue to follow my story, I'm going to continue doing this. And so feel free to subscribe. We'll kind of go through this journey together. And as always, please share. The story might not be for you, but there might be someone out there that you know that this story might be helpful to. So please share. All right. Get out there and live like someone left the gate open.